I think Paul McCartney's gonna like do some sort of Wings documentary, but alongside the documentary, he's also releasing like a new Wings compilation. I should show off some of the old CDs I have. Past compilation albums that Paul McCartney has done. In the 80s, Paul had a hit album, Tug of War, but then he had a bunch of not so good albums like Pipes of Peace, which was basically leftovers from Tug of War. His movie, Give My Regards to Broad Street, Press to Play, those were all commercially panned, and so to save his career, he released a compilation album, All the Best. I have two versions. One is the American version, and the other is the British version, and the tracks are slightly different. Like, the British version has a Mull of Kintyre on it, while the American version doesn't. And I think the British version also has the Frogs song, We All Stand Together, as well. And Once Upon a Long Ago. And you can see that on the front cover. That's the British version. In the American version, it doesn't have the Frog song or Once Upon a Long Ago, so that's missing from the covers. But anyway, that was like the first compilation he did. And then I think in 2001, he released this, Wingspan, which was, it was kind of an odd compilation. It has both Wings songs on it, but also some of his solo stuff from McCartney One, Ram, and stuff he did between 1980 and 1984. So that I guess that's why it's called Wingspan, spanning 14 years of his career after the Beatles. There was another compilation he did in 2016 called Pure McCartney, and that was basically went from 1970 to 2013, which was then his most recent album, New. So it didn't include any material from Egypt Station or McCartney 3 since those came after. And now Paul's doing a new compilation of his Wings albums. To understand this, for the past decade or something, Paul's been reissuing a lot of his old albums, including his Wings ones. So let me get those as well. Paul's done this thing called the Paul McCartney Archive Collection, where he's released both Wings albums and some of his solo stuff. Wildlife, the first Wings album. Red Rose Speedway, the second one. Band on the Run, probably his most popular album out of everything, even among both Wings and non-Wings. Venus and Mars, Wings at the Speed of Sound, Wings Over America, or Wings Around the World if you're getting the international version. That's his live album. The last two are not like the others. London Town and Back to the Egg. These albums, these are like old CD reissues from years ago, but for some reason, Paul reissued all his other Wings albums, but he didn't reissue these two. Wax Badger suggested that maybe it's because, I think Paul switched labels or something at this time. There was difficulties with Wings on London Town. I think their name's Jimmy McMullah. I'm probably not saying his name right. Their drummer, I think, Joe English, they left the band, so it was just Paul, Linda, and Denny Lane. And then they got new people, Lawrence Juber and Steve Hawley for Back to the Egg. This album was not well received, I think, and then Paul had his infamous drug bust in Japan in 1980, which cut short the final Wings tour, and then that's when Paul basically became a solo artist. After releasing McCartney 2 and having a few sessions with Wings, it's like he lost interest. I think Paul said in one interview that there was never a time where he said, okay, Wings, we're done, I'm through, I'm going solo now. It's just they lost interest. But anyway, fans have really wanted to have these last two albums reissued. So this is the documentary that's, I think, is going to come out or something. Paul is going to go back and tell the story of Wings. At the same time, we're getting the new Beatles Anthology as well. The first hints that there was going to be a new compilation album coming out for Wings. I guess Paul McCartney fans noticed that a bunch of new Wings merchandise was coming up on Paul McCartney's online store. And then we got the actual announcement, the Wings collection. And we got this trailer here on YouTube that I'll react to, but I have to turn off the sound since, it's going to have music and everything. So let's just watch this. Here we have Paul McCartney, in the light of heaven or something. Denny Lane, Linda, at the dawn of the 1970s. Paul McCartney would form a new band. Wings! That would be defining the sound of a decade. Yeah. There we go, just... It was a rebellion. It was a risk. It was a bunch of other things that are too fast for me to read. Yeah. The albums. The singles. The hits. Yeah, Wings, 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 spanning every era. On the Ultimate Collection. Yeah. 3 LP, 1 LP, 2 CD collection, 1 CD collection, Blu-ray editions. Yeah. The band, the music, The collection. I just remembered, I forgot, there was one more compilation album. While Wings was still together, they released Wings Greatest or something. And that album actually got a reissue recently. Also, if you go to like record stores like Rasputin's or something, you can see like new prints of Wings Greatest. Now remember, I mentioned that fans for years have wanted these two albums to be reissued. Let me read some of the reactions that were left. There's one from yours truly, but yeah, we have people saying, this is nice, but what we really want is an archive collection for London Town and Back to the Egg. Tons and tons of, people agreeing. Finish the archive collection. Now, I should note that the last archive collection album to be released was Flaming Pie, which is a 1997 Paul McCartney album, and there's been no more archive collections. Paul has reissued some of his Wings albums again. A new version of Band on the Run he reissued that has like extra tracks that are less instrumentation and stripped down. Kind of similar to Double Fantasy stripped down that not John, but Yoko Ono released back in 2010. We have some more comments here. I think we all want London Town and Back to the Egg archive collections. Anything but a London Town and Back to the Egg archive, huh? Give us London Town and Back to the Egg? Who needs another compilation? We want archive stuff, please. London Town and Back to the Egg. Please finish the archive collection. London Town, Back to the Egg, Press to Play, archive editions, please! I've not seen a lot of people demand like an archive version of Press to Play, which is one of Paul's 80s albums that wasn't well received because it's basically Paul applying a bunch of 80s synthesizers and everything and trying to be like, I'm still relevant! So I guess people have now come around on that album and are like nostalgic for it. The one and only Back to the Egg would be nice. Well, there goes my hopes and dreams of a London Town and Back to the Egg archive collection. Where's the rest of the archive collection? London Town and Back to the Egg. Please archive a collection. Thank you. But no London Town or Back to the Egg archive collection deluxe boxes or vinyl reissues or Press to Play. Another person that wants Press to Play for some reason. London Town and Back to the Egg archives, please, next. What about London Town and Back to the Egg archive collection? I need the archive collection finished. Too many great albums unavailable. Yeah, you can see like just constant comments about London Town and Back to the Egg over and over. Well, we already have Wings Greatest, Wingspan, All the Best, and Paul McCartney, that Pure McCartney 2016. So nice one, MPL. Give us something we already got. How about remastering Back to the Egg and London Town for us long-term loyal fans? Back to the Egg and London Town! Over and over and over. I think you all get the point now. People are really, really disappointed. Like, even though there's a Wings documentary or book or whatever coming out, people are just in an uproar that we're not getting these final two albums reissued and everything. So, since I don't have a archive collection version of London Town, what I do have, ouch, my nose. Let me show this off. I have a bootleg. I got this thing, Wings London Town Sessions. It's basically a bootleg. CD 1 is like, I think, it says a press testing acetate or whatever. But then discs 2 and disc 3 are like a bunch of recording sessions that Paul and Wings did. Some of them are like, I think, are just sessions by Paul by himself. I think there's also some demo versions of Mull of Kintyre. But there's also some weird oddities. Like, I think it includes one of the CDs includes an excerpt from Paul McCartney's radio show Ubu Jubu, where he played Linda doing a cover of the song Sugar Time. There's also a weird Linda McCartney song called C-Side to the B-Side. That was the B-side to one of her other songs, Seaside Woman, hence the title B-Side to the Seaside. And weirdly, there's also a remix of the song that was done in like 1986, which would have been the same time as Press to Play. And the remix does sound like it could have been an outtake from Press to Play, weirdly, just from all the stuff they add. Yeah, so this is the closest thing I have to a London Town archive collection, just having a bunch of the demos and everything. I did see that there are some bootlegs for Back to the Egg where they have alternate takes, and there's also like bootleg recordings of the final Wings concert. That would be the tour where they did the live version of Coming Up. That's a McCartney 2 song that Paul had Wings do before he released the official song on McCartney 2. Obviously, I think we're not going to get a reissue of a Wings Last Flight. I think that's what the bootleg was called that I listened to. That was their last concert because Paul would later get arrested for marijuana possession in Japan. So apparently Paul's on his, the Get Back tour or whatever. On his new set list or something, he now opens with the Beatles song Help, which is actually a song that was primarily written by John Lennon. If you search this, you can find Beatles fans like questioning why is Paul doing this? Because John's original intention for Help was to have the song much slower because he was really going through emotional issues at that time, but to make the song more accessible and more poppy and everything, he was told to like speed it up and make it more peppy and everything. So the Beatles version of Help is a lot happier, and I've seen a couple people say that Paul has done versions of Help in concert where it's much slower the way John would have wanted to intend it. But Paul's performances of Help now, it's the Beatles version where it's more sped up and more happy sounding, even though if you read the lyrics, they're anything but happy. But anyway, they're like questioning why is Paul's doing this. Again, weird drama that Paul is worried about his legacy or something, and that's something his recent lyrics book he put out, like songs that were said to be primarily written by John for the Beatles. Paul wants to say, oh, I contributed a line or two to that one. I don't know if Paul contributed any lines to the song Help, but it's like people are questioning, is this Paul trying to reclaim Help for himself? Oh, I did 50-50 or whatever. Or is this just Paul wanting to open his concerts with a happy sounding song or something? Just something nostalgic or whatever for Beatles fans. We don't really know. But it's just, to me, like one of the sillier controversies. I'm not quite happy that we've gone 5 years without another archive collection doing a London Town and Back to the Egg. I'm not so obsessed that, if I see Paul McCartney on concert, I'm going to throw tomatoes at him or something. Or if I really wanted to piss Paul off, instead of throwing tomatoes, something vegetarian, I don't know, I throw steaks at him or something, or hamburgers, because he's vegetarian. One of the other controversies that's been going on is that with the new Beatles Anthology reissue, they're adding a 4th disc. Beatles fans were unhappy that most of the material in Beatles Anthology 4 is just stuff that's already been released on other albums, like the White Album deluxe version, Sgt. Pepper's deluxe version, where they included a bunch of outtakes. And there's very few new outtakes that's on Beatles Anthology 4. And one of the big complaints that was being made was that if you wanted to order Beatles Anthology 4, you have to get the entire new set, Beatles Anthology 1, 2, 3, and 4. But a lot of fans have, the Beatles Anthology CDs from the 90s. We don't want to re-buy the entire collection just to get the 4th disc. And so finally, after a lot of complaints online, Apple Corps was like, okay, we're going to let you be able to buy Beatles Anthology 4 without buying the other 3 volumes. That's a positive change. So maybe one of these days they'll include a Carnival of Light or the 27-minute version of Helter Skelter in some future project, I don't know. Because that was another complaint, that Beatles Anthology 4 didn't include some of the most sought out unreleased material that fans have really wanted to hear. Apparently Carnival of Light is so weird it makes Revolution 9 seem normal in comparison. Let me see what comments there are. Chicken legs would be easier to throw. Now throw drumsticks at Paul or something. Maybe be like, we prefer Ringo. Here's chicken drumsticks at you. I don't know. Paul would probably sick his security on you though if you did that or something. Yeah, by the way, the eggs that Domino's flipping there, that's supposed to be inspired by Back to the Egg. And the background is inspired by Venus and Mars. Is having a bunch of spinning eggs on this animation, the most recognition Back to the Egg has gotten in years. I am happy to see that there are, that Paul is now hopefully getting the message that London Town and Back to the Egg have more fans than he thought there was.